Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson. I'm joined by the mighty Joe Yeager. Well, mighty Joe, it's finally game week. It's Wyoming week, that edition of the Mailbag. And we have some really good questions this week, so I'm fired up to get right to them. First one comes from Ecam Actions. He said he's heard a lot of back and forth about tarps or specially designed graphic tarps, etc. What's the actual game day setup going to look like for the Oregon game? You know, I'm not sure. We actually had Robert Jeeve and Eddie Gio on the Rockin' pregame last week, and he did say the band is going to be broken up. Like, that's your second question is, you know, with the game day entrances coming out of opposing tunnels, how is that going to look? Well, I have all the faith in the Going Band that they'll get creative with how they, you know, what they're going to do and how they enter the stadium. This is just a reality to make the South End Zone project come to fruition. Is they're going to have to, you know, keep working throughout the season. One of the cool things is that the Jones should look different for every game that we come to, you know. So that'll be unique. Yeah. The stadium different every game. In terms of tarps, I think there are going to be some tarps to cover the construction. I don't know about the graphic design nature of it. All right, next question comes from Red Raider KA, who wants to know, is all the hype around Steve Linton legit? That's a great question. We can't, I mean, I can sit here and be like, oh yeah, you know, but we don't know yet because we haven't seen him play as a Red Raider. I think it is. The people who have been telling me for a while, watch out for Steve Linton, are people I really trust. They don't BS. They'll say some real things about even some of their players. And then I've seen it for myself, just his athleticism. And I mean, in the last scrimmage, he had 4 sacks, according to Joey McGuire. That sounds pretty dang good to me. Doesn't speak much to the tackles that we're worried about, but that's not your question. I think Steve Linton is going to have a very good season. I really do.
Yeah, me too. But I will say this: this Wyoming game will probably not be the showcase for that.
Right.
You know, they're going to pound it in all likelihood right between the tackles. They don't have much of a passing game, and they're probably not going to want to face Linton and all the rest of those pass rushers. So I think they're going to keep it on the ground. Linton may have a pretty quiet day, but don't let that cool you off on him because, yeah, I think he's legit.
One thing I did see from him is it's not just pass rush. I mean, you got to set the edge over there. And in the spring game, he did a pretty good job of it. There was actually a goal line situation where he made a stop to get off the field. So, you know, he's not just a one-trick pony. I think he can help against the run. He's going to have to, or they won't play him. You know, I mean, he's got to do both. But you're right. In terms of as a pass rusher, I don't think we'll see as much. But all it takes is one play, right? Wyoming's going to pass some. If he makes one big play and one great pass rush, then it'll probably be a successful day for him. Next question comes from Panther Cat, who wants to know, he says, Chapman Lewis, a true freshman in the 2 deep at safety. How do I feel about that? I feel like that tells you that's one of the weaknesses on the team is depth. Now, they really like Chapman Lewis, and they have. They liked him through the recruiting process. They like him since he got on campus in spring. But anytime you see a true freshman in the 2 deep on a really good veteran team like this, I mean, that's why I'm saying, and I actually asked Coach McGuire in the press conference Monday about that. Like, is there enough depth? How do you feel about the depth in the secondary? And he said basically what I just said, he likes these guys. They have potential, or they wouldn't have recruited and brought them in. So they're guys. Like guys like him and Jordan Sanford and Brendan Jordan, you know, DBs that they signed this last class. But they're freshmen, you know, so they're going to be nervous, you know, and it's going to be interesting to see how they react. Hopefully he'll get some playing time, and not because of injury, but because Tech, you know, wins big. But he does have talent. I like him. He can run. He's more of a free safety kind of dude, than a like up around the line of scrimmage kind of safety. And I think he was a good receiver too in high school at times, and I think he could be a good player, Joe.
Yeah, and you know what that tells me about the guy is that as a true freshman in the 2 deep, this is probably a pretty smart football player.
Yeah.
I mean, they wouldn't have him probably in that position unless he didn't know what he was doing. Now, I think the fact that he probably picked up the defense very well and is in the right place at the right time, knows what he's doing out there, is probably one of the main reasons why he's in that 2 deep spot. So, you know, that's a comforting thing. You don't want somebody back there who's going to blow plays at safety.
Right.
That's the last line, right?
Yeah.
So hopefully he is indeed a very cerebral football player, and that will come in handy.
Lance 4523 asks, do you feel that there are going to be packages for both quarterbacks to play during each game? How much do you expect the quarterback to run? Well, Kidley was asked about that basically on Monday, and he had no comment. You'll have to find out. They said that every week, and then we didn't see it a whole lot actually during the season. last year. So I think Barrymore will play some, but Tyler Shuck is your guy. And they have so many other options too at receiver and running back and stuff that, I mean, you might see a trick play here or there, but I don't think it's going to be like a big storyline this season. But you never know. And then in terms of will the quarterbacks run? Yeah, they're going to run. I think part of that's just Shuck calling his own number. I mean, Kitley's, admitted that, hey, I didn't dial up 25 runs. Some of that, the quarterback took it upon himself, and it worked, so it was fine, And they put a lot on their quarterback. So I think the quarterbacks will run some, but McGuire has said specifically that the offensive line's better. Sometimes they had to run with the quarterback to get a numbers advantage last year because the offensive line struggled. He feels like the offensive line is much better, especially on the interior, but as a whole, and that they'll be able to run with the actual running backs more this year.
Yeah, on the packages, in the case of Baron Morton, I think he's probably got that offense down pretty much pat to this point. So I don't know too much about special packages with him, but I think he's got the entire playbook, and he's got certain plays that he runs better than others plays. There's certain throws that he makes better than others, and that will be emphasized if and when he gets into the game. But I don't think you're necessarily talking about specific packages. As far as running goes, he's a weapon, Tyler Shuck, as a runner. Yeah. And I think you're going to see Tech take advantage of that, or Shuck himself, as you say, take advantage of that maybe 3-4 times a game where you really, really need to pick up that short yardage or something. He tucks it and goes. But they're worried. They don't want it. Last thing they want is to get him hurt. So he's not going to be his running the football is not going to be a central part of the offensive scheme at all.
I agree. Next question comes from Syntax, who asks, do fans on a message board need to take it one game at a time? Absolutely not.
Agree wholeheartedly.
All right. Next question comes from Jay Mizo, this is another good question. He says, is there ever a chance we could get the Roof Raider back? I hope so. I don't think so, but that was a fun tradition or, in-game. I'm all for, anything that will make it fun that seems more organic than just blaring music and advertisements, which I don't want to get on a tangent on that, but we're on record as saying, man, the in-game experience is a beatdown at the stadium now compared to what it used to be. So bringing something back like the Roof Raider would be cool if they could.
Yeah, and that's where the fans need to get on a big letter writing campaign or email these days and get together and flood the brass, the people who make the decision, say you want this. Now, one thing that's a little bit of a concern is that these days safety is almost everything that matters. And so if there's any danger him up there waving that flag and a big West Texas wind comes along and blows him off, they could use that as an excuse to say, no, we can't do this. So be prepared for that sort of line of argument as to why that cannot happen.
I think you're 100% right. And as soon as I stopped talking about this, I wished I had said something like that. But that is more than likely. And I've heard something along those lines about that it's, that's in terms of liability, that they don't want to take that risk. And I understand. It's not fun, but I understand their take on that. Next question comes from 78 Tech, who wants to know, how many players on the football roster are Joey McGuire recruits? Well, believe it or not, this is debatable because some of these recruits were initially recruited by the previous coaching staff, but then they ended up signing with the new coaching staff. But I went through and counted, and I was generous, but I went kind of both ways on some of it in terms of, well, this guy, he was already committed, and so he was going to come, but this guy had to be talked into staying on the commitment list and all that. And it was over 60. I was surprised. A lot of the starters, because they're veterans, which makes sense, were already here. But there's a lot of transfers and a lot of high school recruits on this roster. I mean, by next year, I really think it's going to be, not completely, but almost very close to being Jess McGuire and his staff's team, which is interesting. Raider Fan 01 asks, does Coach McGuire have any special pregame rituals with the team the night before the game? Yeah, they have the team dinner, the team movie. I think they have walkthroughs in the hotel as well. And even when they're here, they stay in I believe it's the Overton, but I'm not sure if that's the case this year, but they have in the past. And they do some walkthroughs in meeting rooms or meeting areas of hotels. So other than that, I'm not sure of a whole big ritual. Next question comes from Tech Freak, who asks, does the younger generation care about football? Well, the young kids that I'm around do. My son is man, he's like a walking encyclopedia, especially of NFL football, but college too, of course, because he's my kid, and he's a big Tech fan. I mean, growing up in Lubbock, of course, and all of his friends. I mean, hell, one of his friends did a PowerPoint on me in school. And I was like, this is weird. Every time I see him, he talks about our YouTube channel. He's probably watching. So Dalton, if you hear me, what's up? But they talk smack about their favorite NFL teams. A lot of them are Kansas City Chiefs fans. My son likes living under my roof, so he's a Dallas Cowboys fan. He's going to be a Dallas Cowboys fan as long as he's living under my roof. So they talk a lot of smack. One of his buddies is a San Francisco fan, so they talk a lot of smack. I mean, my nephew, who's 18, 19, same. I mean, I wouldn't say it's like his, he's crazy about it like my son and his friends are, but I mean, yeah, he's a big fan. So no, I think football to me is as strong as ever. In terms of fandom, fan interest. I mean, you look at the numbers and everything now. In terms of in-person at the stadium, it's different because the home experience has gotten so much better, and almost every game is on TV. And I mean, all the reasons of your comfort of your house. But those numbers are there, my Joe.
Yeah, and the thing that I wonder about is sort of level of attention. I mean, a lot of these guys seem to be into it. But are they into it for the full 4 quarters? We see a lot of mass exodus. What's the reason for that? Could be lots of different explanations for it. But, I mean, our generation and the generation before that, I mean, man, there could be tornadoes dipping down on the 50-yard line and we weren't leaving, man. So that's something that is a little bit an innovation or a development of some sort that kind of leads me to question a little bit. But again, this is one of those things that is extremely difficult to put any sort of a measurement or a number on. I guess failing an in-depth study, you just really don't know for sure.
Yep. Final question comes from Raider Football 86, who wants to know, does Tech have a better chance of having a 1,000-yard rusher or receiver, and who would that player be? Well, I think it comes down to Taj Brooks as your running back, and either Jerand Bradley or a Miles Price at receiver. And you know what, Mighty Joe? I think it's going to be hard for Taj to crack that 1,000-yard mark. And I think it might be hard for Bradley too. But if I had to choose one of them, I would take probably Bradley or Miles Price, maybe even Loic Fungi too, over Taj Brooks or Cameron Valdez.
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I mean, I've been pubbing up old Taj the entire offseason.
Yeah.
I really think very highly of him. I think he's going to have a great year. I would be surprised if he does not crack 900 yards, but 1,000. I mean, now that's going to come down, does he get enough carries or not? And, he gets another 15, 20 carries, that might do it. It could be that close. But now, having said that, I think Jerand Bradley probably has a little bit better chance of cracking 1,000 yards than Taj does. But, I mean, the disparity is not as great this year between receiver productivity and running back productivity, I think, than it has been in the past. In the past, you ask that sort of question, I always would say, obviously, yeah, the receiver.
Right.
This year, I think it could be a closer deal because I believe Taj is going to have a big year.
Great stuff, Mighty Joe. Great questions from y'all. Hey, it's finally here. Season kickoff, again, 6:30 p.m. Central Time, Saturday in Laramie, Wyoming, Texas Tech versus Wyoming. But for now, that'll do it. And until next time.